500,000 years of frozen slumber shattered in an instant as Eugene Griffin's cryopod hissed open. He stumbled out, muscles atrophied, mind reeling, an impossible awakening in an alien place and time. Around him rose unfamiliar architecture, sleek curves of unknown alloys, lit by the sickly green glow of bioluminescent panels. Memories surged back unbidden. Earth, once vibrant and green, now a charred husk beneath roiling storm clouds. Desperate evacuation ships fleeing into the void. Wormholes collapsing, ships scattered across the cosmos. Then the lurch of a drive failure, the wail of proximity alarms, and the hiss of cryogas. Eugene's pod was one of several, he realized, each containing a human refugee cast adrift in the unforgiving currents of space and time. They huddled together, blinking in the harsh light, more lost and alone than any humans in history. As the disoriented survivors took stock of their surroundings, Eugene stepped forward, his voice ringing with authority. "Listen up. We need to get our bearings and figure out our next move. Dr. Wright, take stock of any tech or resources we've got left. Cade, find us some shelter and get basic necessities sorted. Sullivan, weapons check and perimeter setup. Move." The others jumped into action, purpose temporarily overriding their shock and confusion. Eugene surveyed the alien architecture with a critical eye, mind racing to formulate plans and contingencies. Zycran melted into the shadows to do his mistress's bidding. Unbeknownst to all, Princess Zephyra lingered outside the throne room, cloaked in a field of shimmering invisibility. Silently she slipped away, brow furrowed in thought. The humans presented an enigma, and perhaps an opportunity. Within the remnants of the crashed ship, Dr. Wright called out in surprise, "Eugene, I think you need to see this." Eugene joined him in a shielded cargo bay. His eyes widened at the sight of gleaming weapons and armor, advanced far beyond anything they'd wielded on Earth. My God, with gear like this, we might actually stand a chance. "Hold it right there." Jack's grip tightened fractionally. "You're one of them. Why should we trust you?" As Zephyra walked deeper into the human camp, she couldn't shake the feeling that her life, in the fate of Zephyron itself, had just been irrevocably altered. The wheels of destiny were turning, and there would be no going back. Eugene's muscles tensed as he watched Dr. Wright hunched over a mess of wires and alien circuitry. Sweat beaded on the scientist's brow, his fingers dancing across unfamiliar interfaces. "Any progress?" Eugene asked, voice low. A sharp crack echoed through the chamber. Eugene's hand flew to his weapon, but the sound wasn't an attack. A shimmering dome of energy bloomed outward, enveloping their makeshift base. "It worked!" Wright exclaimed, eyes wide. "We've got a shield that can withstand orbital bombardment." Eugene allowed himself a tight smile. "Good work. We'll need every advantage we can get." A crackle of static from his comm unit interrupted any further celebration. Jack's gruff voice came through. "Captain, we're in position. Commencing infiltration of the palace." "Understood," Eugene replied. "Be careful in there, Sullivan." Suddenly, alarms blared from the comm. "We've got her!" Jack's voice was strained, punctuated by the sound of weapons fire. "But we're cut off. Zycran and his goons have us pinned down." Eugene's mind raced. He glanced at a panel displaying readouts from their ship's experimental weapons. One in particular caught his eye, a graviton beam of terrifying power. His finger hovered over the activation switch. The chance of collateral damage was high, but if he didn't act... Eugene closed his eyes and pressed the button. "What the hell was that?" Jack's voice crackled through, a mix of awe and horror. "Get out of there," Eugene ordered, his voice hollow. "Now!" Minutes later, Jack's team stumbled into the base, supporting a slender alien female, Princess Zephyra. Her eyes darted around the human encampment, a mix of fear and fascination evident in her expression. "My mother," she began, her voice quavering. "She plans to use an ancient weapon, one that will destroy all life on Zephyron. It can only be controlled by human DNA." Eugene's reply was cut short by a proximity alert. A massive ship had just entered orbit. Before panic could set in, a transmission came through. Relief washed over Eugene, but it was short-lived. As Briggs began transmitting data about Earth's true history, chaos erupted. Alarms blared. Security feeds showed a shuttle launching from the Odyssey, streaking toward the Pakled Palace. On board, a human face sneered at the camera. Xander Krell, a traitor in their midst. The ground shook as Pakled forces, newly armed with stolen human tech, launched an assault on their position. The shield held, but cracks were already forming. As they fled into the wilderness, Eugene's mind raced. They had to find the Doomsday device before Valara could activate it. It was their only leverage, their only hope of survival. Behind them, explosions lit up the night sky as the Odyssey engaged the Pakled warfleet in a desperate battle. Eugene pushed forward, knowing that every second counted. Eugene's boots crunched over alien soil as he led his team across Zephron's rugged terrain. Princess Zephyra moved beside him, her luminous eyes scanning the horizon. "Incoming!" Sullivan's voice crackled over the comm. "We've engaged a Pakled patrol near the crash site, buying you time, but they're pressing hard." Eugene's eyes hardened. "Acknowledged. Stay alive out there, Jack." The ground trembled as orbital bombardments lit up the horizon. Through his binoculars, Eugene watched Odyssey's shields flare under sustained fire from the Pakled warfleet. "Captain!" Dr. Wright's panicked voice cut through the static. "They've breached the lab. Krell is—" The transmission dissolved into a burst of static. Eugene's fist tightened. He turned to Olivia Cade, his second-in-command. "Take a strike team. Get right out of there." "We push on to the temple. It's our only shot at ending this." As Cade's team peeled off, Eugene led the remainder of his forces towards the looming mountain range. They slogged through knee-deep bogs of bioluminescent ooze and scaled treacherous cliffs of razor-sharp obsidian. Princess Zephyra's eyes widened. "How will we get past them?" A ghost of a smile touched Eugene's lips. "Sometimes the best way through a wall is to become part of it." He activated his comm. "Sullivan, we need those Pakled armor schematics. Time to go undercover." Clad in the scavenged Pakled battle gear, Eugene's team slipped past the siege lines. They navigated labyrinthine corridors of carved stone, ducking into alcoves whenever patrols passed. An echoing boom shook dust from the ceiling. The Pakled assault had begun in earnest. "Move!" Eugene barked, abandoning stealth for speed. They raced through twisting passages, plasma bolts sizzling past. Eugene's stolen armor took a glancing hit, the smell of burned circuits filling his nostrils. "Plant the explosives. We end this now." His team spread out, attaching detonators to the obelisk's base. Eugene's finger hovered over the trigger. A voice, cold and familiar, cut through the chamber. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." From the shadows emerged a hooded figure. As the cowl fell back, Eugene found himself staring into eyes he thought he'd never see again. "Hello, old friend," the figure said, a sardonic smile twisting his features. "Did you miss me?" "Eugene." The name hung in the air, laden with history and unspoken truths. Eugene's finger froze over the detonator. "What are you?" As plasma bolts ricocheted outside, Reza spoke of humanity's cosmic diaspora, their fall from grace, in the doomsday failsafe that could reset galactic civilization. "There's another way," Reza said, extending a hand. "The central archives on our capital world. With that knowledge, we can forge a new path." Eugene lowered the detonator, hope kindling in his chest. "How do we—" A blur of motion. Princess Zephyra snatched the control key and bolted. "No!" Eugene lunged, but she was gone, racing through twisting corridors. "We need to move," Reza urged, deflecting incoming fire with an energy shield. They fought their way out, Eugene's mind turning. How could he have been so blind? Hours later, aboard the Odyssey, a transmission crackled through. Empress Valara's face filled the view screen, triumphant. "Behold," she sneered, holding up the stolen key. "Surrender, or watch your precious Zephron burn." The bridge erupted in chaos. Eugene's fist clenched as he watched Jack coordinate guerrilla strikes planetside. Olivia's voice cut through, reporting on civilian evacuations. A proximity alert wailed. Maya's mercenary fleet dropped out of hyperspace, guns blazing. "Cavalry's here," Captain Briggs grinned before his expression fell. "What the hell?" A shimmering field enveloped the planet, trapping their ships in orbit. Eugene's lips pursed. Prep a shuttle. I'm going down there. It's our only shot. Minutes later, Eugene's craft pierced the atmosphere. The comms crackled with reports of the battle raging below. Jack's team holding the line, Olivia shepherding refugees to safety, Dr. Wright miraculously rescued, working to disable the jamming field. Eugene's shuttle touched down outside Valara's palace. Guards surrounded him instantly. I'm here to negotiate, he said, raising his hands. They marched him through opulent halls to the throne room. Valara lounged on her floating seat, malice in her eyes. How predictable, she purred. The gallant captain, come to save the day. You don't have to do this, Eugene said. We can find another way. Valara's laughter echoed off marble walls. Guards, take him away. It's time to end this farce. Sorry we're late to the party, she smirked. The throne room exploded into chaos. Eugene broke free, diving for cover as plasma bolts seared the air. He spotted the control key, inches from Valara's outstretched fingers. He rolled, coming up in a crouch. Maya, catch! A tremor shook the palace. Eugene's eyes widened as he realized the awful truth. The doomsday device had already been activated. A deep resonant hum filled the air as the device powered up, its ancient mechanisms grinding to life. Cavalry's here, Jack shouted, opening fire on Valara's guards. Through the melee, he spotted Jack grappling with Valara. The Empress shrieked as the human wrestled the control key from her grasp. With a triumphant yell, Jack slammed it into the device's interface. Then Valara's laughter cut through the quiet. Fools, she spat. Did you think I wouldn't have a contingency? She pressed a hidden button on her throne. Alarms blared as the palace shook violently. Reza's metallic voice rang out. There's only one way to stop it. We need a pure human DNA sample injected directly into the core. All eyes turned to Eugene. He stood, lips pursed. I'll do it. Eugene met the android's gaze. There's no other choice. He strode to the pulsing obelisk, ignoring the objections of his team. With steady hands, he extracted a vial of his blood and inserted it into the waiting receptacle. As his physical form dissolved, Eugene became aware of the device's systems, of the planet itself. With a thought, he purged the pack-led forces from Zephyron, scattering their fleet to the far reaches of space. But his task wasn't finished. Through the haze of his new existence, Eugene reached out. He found Jack and Zephyra, imparting vital knowledge of escape pods that would take them to humanity's long-lost homeworld. Go, his disembodied voice echoed in their minds. Find the truth. I'll be watching over you. As the humans boarded their vessels, Eugene glimpsed Valara, fury etched on her face as she fled to her remaining ships. He knew this wasn't over. The escape pods streaked into the night sky, carrying the last remnants of humanity towards an uncertain future. Eugene's consciousness stretched across the cosmos, fragments of his being preparing them for the trials ahead. You okay? Princess Zephyra asked from the adjacent bunk. Jack rubbed his temples. Yeah, just dreams. Weird ones. As sleep reclaimed him, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that the real challenge was only beginning. On the shattered remains of humanity's birth world, something ancient and terrible awaited their arrival. Jack Sullivan jolted awake as the escape pod's proximity alarm blared. Through the viewport, a pockmarked moon loomed large, its surface scarred by impact craters and the ruins of ancient structures. Brace for landing, he barked, strapping himself in. Survivors stumbled from their vessels, disoriented but alive. Jack's eyes scanned the horizon, noting the twisted metal spires jutting from the lunar surface. Something about them felt wrong. A familiar voice crackled over his comm. Jack, do you read me? Reza, Jack's brow furrowed. How? No time to explain. I'm transmitting coordinates to a hidden outpost. Make your way there immediately. The surface isn't safe after dark. As if on cue, an inhuman howl echoed across the desolate landscape. Jack's blood ran cold. Move out, he shouted, urging the survivors forward. They trudged across the alien terrain, each step kicking up plumes of gray dust. Jack's eyes darted from shadow to shadow, tracking movement at the edge of his vision. A scream pierced the air. Jack spun to see Princess Zephyra tackling a civilian, shielding him from a hail of debris as a nearby structure collapsed. When the dust cleared, Zephyra lay motionless, a jagged piece of rebar protruding from her side. The howls grew closer. Jack saw shapes moving in the darkness, twisted feral things that had once been human. "Logan," Jack called to his sergeant, "take point, get these people to the outpost, go!" As Decker led the main group ahead, Jack and a small team provided covering fire. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, keeping the mutant horde at bay. They reached the outpost, a reinforced bunker nestled in the lee of a towering arcology. The blast doors ground open, revealing Reza's gleaming form. "Hurry," the android urged. Jack's team piled inside, Dr. Kane rushing Zephyra to the medical bay. As the doors sealed shut, Jack slumped against a wall, exhaustion threatening to overtake him. A proximity alert blared. On the monitors, Jack watched as a massive fleet dropped out of hyperspace, their hulls emblazoned with Empress Valara's insignia. "They found us," Reza said grimly. Jack's heart made. He turned to Logan Decker, who stood at attention nearby. "Sergeant, I need you to get these people to safety. There's a rally point here." Jack jabbed a finger at the map. "Reza and I will hit the Citadel, try to activate that nexus." Decker nodded, perseverance etched on his face. Jack's comm crackled. Maya's voice cut through the static. "Sullivan, we're engaging Valara's blockade. We'll punch a hole for evac shuttles, but you need to move fast." They emerged from the outpost, a strike team at their backs. The Citadel loomed before them, its ancient spires disappearing into the low-hanging clouds. As they approached, the ground shook. Fissures opened in the lunar surface, disgorging hordes of mutant attackers. Jack's rifle spat superheated plasma, cutting down the first wave. But for everyone that fell, 2 more took its place. "There!" Reza shouted, pointing to a half-buried entrance. They fought their way inside, the sounds of battle fading as they descended into the Citadel's depths. Ancient machinery hummed to life around them, reacting to their presence. After what felt like hours of navigating treacherous corridors and deadly traps, they reached the central core. Jack's breath caught in his throat as he beheld the Nexus, a pulsing orb of energy suspended in a field of crackling lightning. But they weren't alone. "I was wondering when you'd show up," a familiar voice echoed through the chamber. Xander Krell stepped from the shadows, flanked by heavily armed mercenaries. "You're just in time to witness the birth of a new era." Jack raised his weapon, but Reza's hand on his arm gave him pause. "This isn't the way, Xander," the android said. "Eugene's consciousness was never meant for one person to control." He gestured to his men. "Kill them!" The chamber erupted in gunfire. Jack dove for cover, returning fire as he tried to maneuver closer to the Nexus. Reza moved with inhuman speed, his metallic form a blur as he engaged Krell's bodyguards. A stray bolt caught the android in the chest, sending him sprawling. Jack watched in horror as Reza's systems began to fail. "Jack," the android's voice crackled, "you must complete the transfer. Eugene, he's the key." With a final surge of power, Reza's hand shot out, grasping the Nexus. Energy arced between them, and Jack felt a presence flood his mind. Jack's perception expanded, his consciousness merging with Eugene's vast stores of knowledge. He saw the Citadel's systems laid bare before him, understood its ancient purpose in a heartbeat. But it was too late. Eugene's hand closed around the pulsing orb, and the world went white. White. The energy coursing through Jack's body threatened to tear him apart at the molecular level. He screamed, his voice lost in the cacophony of power surging around him. Jack blinked, disoriented. The world around him had frozen, caught in a moment of suspended animation. Xander Krell's face was twisted in a rictus of rage, his outstretched hand mere inches from the Nexus. Reza lay motionless on the ground, sparks dancing across his damaged chassis. He materialized in a sleek metallic chamber. Nearby, he saw Princess Zephyra floating in a translucent pod, her wounds healing before his eyes. Xander Krell and Empress Valara were contained in similar vessels, their expressions locked in perpetual fury. "Welcome aboard, Jack Sullivan," a melodious voice intoned. Jack spun to face the speaker. A tall, regal figure stood before him, her iridescent skin shimmering in the low light. Behind her loomed a massive warrior, his armor jam-packed with advanced weaponry. Isara's lips curved in an enigmatic smile. "We're rewriting the future, Mr. Sullivan. Your species stands at a crossroads, and we intend to ensure you take the correct path." "Your people will be safe," Isara assured him. "Now we must address the matter of Eugene's consciousness." Jack felt a presence stir within his mind. Eugene's voice, weak but unmistakable, echoed in his thoughts. "Jack, be careful. We don't know their true intentions." Isara's eyes narrowed. "Your companion is wise to be cautious, but I assure you, our goals align. Corvin, prepare the induction chamber." The hulking warrior nodded, moving to a control panel. A cylindrical device rose from the floor, crackling with energy. "This will stabilize Eugene's matrix," Isara explained. "It's imperative we preserve his knowledge." "All right," he said, stepping towards the device. "Let's do this." Corvin activated the chamber. Jack felt Eugene's presence being drawn from his mind, streams of data coalescing into a pulsing orb of light. When it was done, he stumbled back, feeling oddly hollow. She turned to Jack, her expression grave. "There's much to be done, Mr. Sullivan. The road ahead will be challenging, but with your help we can forge a new future for humanity." Jack nodded, his gaze fixed on the swirling essence of his old friend. Whatever came next, he knew nothing would ever be the same. "Welcome to your new home, Mr. Sullivan," Isara's voice came from behind him. "This world, which we call Nova Terra, will be the foundation upon which humanity rebuilds." A towering figure approached, his armor gleaming in the alien sunlight. "Corvin will assist you in matters of defense and strategy," Isara explained. "The galaxy is a dangerous place, and your people must be prepared." "It's incredible, Jack," Alice said, her eyes wide with excitement. "The advancements our ancestors made in bioengineering alone, it's beyond anything I could have imagined." Jack smiled, but a nagging worry gnawed at him. "Just be careful, Alice. Some knowledge comes at a price." As he left the lab, Jack noticed a commotion near the colony's perimeter. He jogged over to find Sergeant Logan Decker in a heated argument with a group of Viserion technicians. "We don't need your alien tech," Decker shouted, his face red with anger. "Humanity rose to power on its own strength, and that's how we'll do it again." Jack stepped between them, placing a hand on Decker's chest. "Stand down, Sergeant. That's an order." Decker's eyes narrowed, but he complied. As the Viserions returned to their work, Jack pulled the sergeant aside. "I understand your concerns, Logan," Jack said in a low voice, "but we can't afford to alienate our allies. Not now." Decker snorted. "Allies? They're glorified babysitters, Jack. Can't you see that?" Before Jack could respond, his comm unit crackled to life. Princess Zephyra's voice came through, tinged with urgency. "Jack, we need you at the council chamber. There's been an incident." "What happened?" Jack demanded. Zephyra's expression was grim. "Logan's people discovered an unauthorized android research facility. Things escalated quickly." Jack's blood ran cold as he saw Corvin on the ground, sparks erupting from a gaping wound in his chest. "This is bad, Jack," Eugene's voice echoed in his mind. "If we don't get this under control, everything we've built here could fall apart." "This is Sullivan. I want Logan Decker and his team confined to quarters immediately. Full lockdown." Protests erupted around the room, but Jack silenced them with a raised hand. "I know many of you share Logan's concerns," he said, his voice carrying across the chamber. "But we cannot allow fear and mistrust to tear us apart, not when we've come so far." Zephyra nodded, but her eyes were troubled. "Jack, there's something else. We've detected strange energy signatures on the outskirts of the settlement. Dr. Kane thinks it might be connected to a hidden archive, but..." "But what?" Jack's mind raced with possibilities. With Eugene's knowledge, he understood the implications all too well. Jack nodded, his heart made. No, he replied quietly, but it's what we have to do. The tranquil night shattered as alarms blared across the settlement. Jack sprinted from the command center, his heart pounding. Isara's holographic form materialized beside him, her usual composure fractured by urgency. "Corvin," Jack barked into his comm, "deploy all available units to protect the civilian sectors." The Viserion warrior's gruff voice crackled back. "Already engaging hostiles, but they've penetrated too deep. We can't hold them all." Jack raced through the chaos, dodging debris and helping the injured to safety. He arrived at the main plaza to find a scene of carnage. Bodies littered the ground, many of them unarmed colonists caught in the initial onslaught. A familiar voice rang out, filled with rage. "This is what trusting aliens gets us." Before Jack could intervene, Logan's followers stormed the makeshift prison. They emerged minutes later with a triumphant Empress Valara in tow. "You want to purge alien influence?" Valara's eyes glittered with malice. "Then let's start with those who would keep humanity chained." Jack's comm crackled again. This time, it was Dr. Alice Kane, her voice tight with fear. The transmission cut off abruptly. Jack's blood ran cold as he saw Logan's troops converging on the research facility. "Alice!" he shouted, but it was too late. Logan's men emerged brandishing vials of the newly created bioweapon. High above, the night sky erupted in silent flashes of light. Maya's mercenary fleet engaged Argaina's Varelian warships in a desperate orbital battle. Jack watched as Princess Zephyra's Pakled ships joined the fray, their advanced stealth technology allowing them to harry the enemy from multiple vectors. Despite the reinforcements, Valara's flagship managed to slip through the blockade. It vanished in a burst of hyperdrive energy, leaving Jack with a sinking feeling in his gut. He turned to see Isara's hologram, her expression grave. "Jack, we've tracked Valara to a frozen moon in the outer system. Logan's already begun dispersing the bioweapon." Jack's mind raced. He thought of the stealth tech the pack leads had shared, of the devastating losses they'd already suffered. A plan began to form. "Get me a strike team," he ordered. "We're going after them." Jack's boots crunched on the frozen surface of the moon as he led his strike team towards Valara's position. The bioweapon crisis had been narrowly averted, but the cost had been high. As they approached the enemy stronghold, his comm unit crackled to life. "Jack, we need to talk." Isara's holographic form flickered into view, her expression stern. "Can it wait? We're about to engage." "No, it can't." Isara's tone brooked no argument. "Return to Nova Terra immediately. The situation has evolved." Hours later, Jack stood in the colony's command center, struggling to process the scene before him. Holo displays showed fierce firefights erupting across multiple districts. Human colonists battled each other, with Viserion peacekeepers caught in the crossfire. "What the hell is going on?" Jack demanded. Isara's eyes narrowed. "Your people have turned on each other, Jack. A separatist faction led by Colonel Rafe Benton has launched a coordinated attack." Before Jack could respond, alarms blared. On the main screen, a cloud of sickly green vapor billowed from a ruptured containment unit. "They've deployed a bioweapon," Corvin shouted, already mobilizing his troops. Jack watched in horror as colonists began to collapse, their bodies convulsing. But then, as quickly as it began, the spread stopped. The particles hung suspended in midair, frozen in place. Isara's hand hovered over a control panel. "Molecular disruption field," she explained. "I had hoped we wouldn't need it." Jack's mind reeled. How long had she been preparing for this? As Viserion teams moved in to neutralize the threat, Isara turned to Jack, her eyes blazing. "You knew about Benton, didn't you?" Jack nodded, shame twisting in his gut. "I thought I could handle it internally. After Logan's rebellion, I couldn't bear the thought of more bloodshed." Isara's fist slammed down on the console. "Your hesitation has cost lives, Jack. I'm deploying the Drakine enforcers. We'll root out this infection once and for all." "Sullivan, we have your alien friends, Corvin, Zephyra, and others. You have 1 hour to meet our demands, or they die. It's time to choose humanity or your Viserion masters." The screen went dark. Jack stared at his reflection, seeing the weight of impossible choices etched in every line of his face. Isara's voice was low, dangerous. "What will it be, Jack? Are you with us or against us?" Jack closed his eyes, Eugene's borrowed memories of centuries of human struggle flooding his mind. When he opened them again, his path was clear. The colonel's grizzled face appeared on screen. "Sullivan, ready to see reason?" "I'm listening," Jack replied, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. Jack met her gaze. "Maybe, but it's our mistake to make." The next hours passed in a blur of covert communications and furtive preparations. Jack fed Benton crucial intelligence on Viserion defenses, all while maintaining a facade of loyalty to Isara. Under cover of darkness, Jack slipped away from the command center. He rendezvoused with a team of hardened militia fighters in a derelict warehouse on the colony's outskirts. "Welcome to the Resistance," Benton growled, tossing Jack a pulse rifle. Their transport hummed to life, cloaked by stealth tech as it ascended into the night sky. Jack's stomach lurched as they made the jump to hyperspace, Altara's coordinates locked in. They emerged into Altara's central power nexus. Banks of alien computers pulsed with energy. Jack's fingers flew over the unfamiliar controls, uploading the virus that would cripple Viserion Command. Alarms blared. The acrid stench of ozone filled the air as energy weapons discharged nearby. They fought their way through waves of Viserion security forces. Jack's stolen bioweapon canisters cleared entire corridors, leaving writhing bodies in their wake. As they neared their extraction point, a familiar figure blocked their path. Commander Corvin, his armor scarred and eyes blazing. "Jack," he rumbled. "Why?" Before Jack could respond, Benton opened fire. Corvin stumbled back, his chest a smoking ruin. Jack's world narrowed to the thunder of gunfire and the metallic tang of blood. They clawed their way back to their ship, leaving chaos in their wake. Benton clapped him on the shoulder. "Buck up, Sullivan. The real fight's just starting." Jack nodded grimly, Eugene's ancient memories swirling in his mind. Humanity would endure, regardless of the cost. Jack's world erupted in blinding light. He stumbled, hands clutching his skull as Eugene's consciousness expanded within him like a supernova. Around him, colonists collapsed, their bodies contorting as the transformation took hold. "No!" Jack screamed, fighting against the tide of change. He felt his cells vibrating, yearning to evolve, but he clung desperately to his humanity. Through sheer force of will, he pushed back against Eugene's influence. "Jack Sullivan," one of them intoned, its voice resonating on multiple frequencies. "Why do you resist ascension?" Jack stumbled backward, revulsion twisting in his gut. "This isn't right," he gasped. "We didn't choose this." "We need to go," Jack urged, grabbing the arm of a shell-shocked woman. "Now!" They ran through the transformed settlement, dodging the curious gazes of the new transgenic beings. Jack led them to the emergency shuttles, praying they hadn't been disabled. As they boarded, a figure stepped out of the shadows. It was Isara, but not as Jack remembered her. Her holographic form had solidified, taking on a physical presence that crackled with energy. "You cannot escape your destiny, Jack," she said, her voice echoing strangely. "The awakening has only begun." Jack slammed the shuttle door shut, his heart pounding. As they lifted off, he watched the colony recede below them. Already, impossible structures were sprouting from the ground, reshaping the landscape into something alien and beautiful. Days turned to weeks as Jack and the survivors drifted through space, searching for a safe haven. They encountered other pockets of unaltered humans fleeing similar transformations on distant worlds. A pattern emerged. Eugene's influence was spreading across the galaxy like wildfire. "This is impossible," Jack muttered. "There shouldn't be anything like this out here." They landed in a clearing, tension thick in the air. As they exited the shuttle, a group of beings emerged from the tree line. They were reminiscent of the transgenics Jack had fled, but different, less polished, more primal. One of them stepped forward, its iridescent skin pulsing with curiosity. "You bring change," it said, voice lilting and strange. "The stars whispered of your coming." "Argana." The former Virelian dissident's eyes glowed with an inner fire. "Hello, Jack," she said, her voice carrying the weight of eons. "We have much to discuss." "Sovath," Argana hissed, her voice a mixture of contempt and grudging respect. The battle was over in moments. The Varelian ships retreated, leaving behind scorched earth and bewildered survivors. Sovath approached Jack, his liquid metal eyes unreadable. "Jack Sullivan," he intoned, voice resonating on multiple frequencies. "We have much to discuss." Hours later, Jack sat in a makeshift war room, his head spinning. Sovath had explained the fractured state of the galaxy, transgenic civilizations warring for dominance, Argana's xenocidal agenda, and the looming threat of a full-scale xenoblitz. Sovath nodded, his form rippling. "Which is why we must act. My transgressors and I can offer protection, but we need your help to stop this madness." Jack's mind raced. It was a desperate plan, but what choice did they have? He opened his mouth to agree when alarms blared throughout the compound. Outside, the sky burned. Swarms of bioengineered monstrosities descended, their forms shifting and pulsing with unnatural life. The xenoblitz had begun. "We need to move now," Sovath shouted, already mobilizing his forces. Jack hesitated, torn between Benton's offer and Sovath's plan. The sky continued to darken as more xenoforming parasites poured from the heavens. Time was running out. In that moment, Jack made his choice. He turned to Sovath, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Get us to that origin prime. It's our only chance to end this." The ship's membrane sealed shut, and they launched into the void, leaving behind a galaxy in flames. Ahead lay an irradiated wasteland, and the ancient secrets buried within. Jack could only hope they would find the answers before it was too late. They hadn't gone more than a kilometer when plasma fire erupted from a nearby ridge. Jack dove behind a jutting crystal formation, heart pounding. "Varelian extremists," Sovath hissed, his form elongating to provide cover. Jack's makeshift squad returned fire, their weapons seeming pitiful against the onslaught. A young colonist, barely out of his teens, caught a plasma bolt to the chest. His scream cut off abruptly as he crumbled to ash. "We need to flank them," Jack shouted over the din. He pointed to a ravine snaking behind the Varelian position. "Cover me!" Days blurred together as they pushed deeper into Omicron Prime's poisoned heart. Jack's forces dwindled, picked off by Varelian hunters or consumed by the planet's toxic miasma. Those who remained grew gaunt, eyes sunken and skin sloughing off in patches. They found respite in the shadow of a massive crystal spire. As the others rested, Jack cornered Sovath. "You're hiding something," Jack growled, pressing his weapon against the transgressor's liquid metal throat. "What aren't you telling us?" Jack's blood ran cold. "You started this? Why?" Before Sovath could answer, the ground beneath them heaved. Crystalline tendrils erupted from the earth, writhing with alien purpose. A nightmarish form clawed its way to the surface, a xenomorphic horror beyond comprehension. They fled deeper into Omicron's depths, hounded by an ever-growing swarm of adaptive killers. Each encounter left more of Jack's people dead or worse, transformed into mindless drones of the hive. Just as all seemed lost, salvation arrived in a hail of gunfire. Black-clad figures descended from the sky, their movements a blur of lethal grace. Jack recognized their insignia, Drakeen commandos. "Sullivan," their leader barked, face hidden behind an opaque visor. "Isara sends her regards. We're getting you out of here." Jack hesitated, torn between escape and the desperate need to reach the progenitor archive. The Drakeen made the choice for him, forming a wedge as they carved a path through the xenomorphic horde. They breached the inner sanctum, a cavernous chamber pulsing with bioluminescent light. At its center stood a towering structure of living crystal, the Prime Archive. Sovath's liquid metal eyes found Jack's. "You," he gurgled, form already beginning to dissipate. "You're the key, Sullivan. Your genes. The only thing that can stop the cycle." "Sorry, Sullivan," their leader said, voice devoid of emotion. "New orders from Isara. You're coming with us, one way or another." Jack raised his hand slowly, mind racing. The fate of humanity, of all sentient life, now rested solely on his shoulders, and he had no idea what to do next. Jack's world exploded in pain as a neural probe burrowed into his skull. He thrashed against his restraints, vision blurring as Isara's biomancers swarmed around him like carrion feeders. Jack's heart raced as he felt an alien presence pushing at the edges of his consciousness. He could sense the vast, churning psyche of Isara's unified megamind, trillions of souls subsumed into a single, terrifying entity. "Perimeter breach!" a Drakeen warrior shouted. "Multiple hostiles boarding!" The warrior's words were cut short as a hail of plasma fire tore through the lab. Through the haze of smoke and sparks, Jack saw a familiar face, Rafe Benton, looking grim but determined. Jack stumbled as they half-carried, half-dragged him through Isara's flagship. His mind reeled, struggling to process the biomancer's revelations about his genetic code. "My DNA!" Jack gasped as they reached Benton's stealth shuttle. "It's the key to stopping all this." Benton's face was grim as he processed the information. "It's a long shot," he said, "but it's the best chance we've got." Over the next weeks, Jack watched as Benton's insurgents executed their audacious plan. Strike teams hit Isara's production facilities with surgical precision, crippling her ability to churn out new transgenics. Meanwhile, Jack worked with a team of rebel scientists, using the stolen Viserion data to triangulate the Arc Integral's location. All paths led to Arcosis 7, a frozen hellscape at the edge of known space. As their ship breached the planet's atmosphere, Jack stared out at endless fields of ice, broken only by the occasional jutting spire of alien technology. They fought their way through automated defense systems, the cold biting through their thermal gear. Jack's breath frosted in the air as they finally reached the Ark's central chamber. As the signal went out, carrying Jack's ancestral Terminator code to every corner of known space, he could only hope it wasn't too late to save what remained of humanity. The Arc Integral pulsed with blinding energy as Jack's genetic signature initiated the transmission. A wave of crackling blue light erupted from the orb, spreading outward in an ever-expanding sphere. Jack stumbled back, shielding his eyes against the intensity. "It's working," Benton breathed, staring at the holographic displays. "The xenoforming parasites are dissolving." Across the galaxy, the tide began to turn. On countless worlds, the chitinous exoskeletons of mutated creatures crumbled to dust. Writhing tendrils of alien flora withered and died. In orbit around 1,000 suns, vast living ships convulsed as their biomechanical systems failed. But as quickly as hope bloomed, it withered. The Arc Integral's displays flashed red, new data streams flooding the interfaces. Jack's face was ashen. The Arc, it's not just reversing the xenoforming, it's targeting all post-genetic modifications. Any civilization that's undergone significant genetic engineering. As if to punctuate his words, a distant explosion lit up Arcosis 7's sky. A Viserion warship, its crew suddenly stripped of their enhanced capabilities, plummeted through the atmosphere in a ball of fire. "We need to move," Jack said, his voice tight. "Now!" Entire Drakeen battle groups wiped out. Isara's network is collapsing. Millions of transgenics reverting, systems failing. Jack's hands trembled as he piloted their vessel away from the dying world. "What have I done?" Benton's face was grim. "You did what you had to, but we're not finished yet." Over the next grueling weeks, Jack and Benton's forces worked tirelessly. They salvaged what they could from the wreckage of fallen civilizations, cobbling together a massive structure that would become humanity's last refuge. As the last of the unaltered humans were loaded aboard, alarms blared throughout the Ark. Jack rushed to the command center, his heart sinking at the sight on the main view screen. A vast armada of ships, their hulls pitted and scarred, bore down on them. At their center loomed Isara's flagship, a monstrous construct of biotech and metal. Jack's mind raced. They weren't ready for a prolonged battle. The Ark's weapons were untested, its shields barely operational. He closed his eyes, knowing there was only one option left. "Initiate displacement drive," he ordered, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at his gut. Warning klaxons sounded as the drive spooled up. The fabric of reality itself seemed to warp around them as the Exodus Arc phased out of normal space-time. For a moment there was silence. Then the universe screamed. Dark energy tore through newly formed realities, shockwaves rippling out in all directions. Jack watched in horror as the sensors picked up the devastation, spreading across dimensions. "Bring them in," he ordered, his voice hoarse. As the survivors were pulled aboard, Jack recognized a familiar face among them. Rafe Benton, bloodied but alive, helped a group of shell-shocked colonists onto the Ark's deck. The two men locked eyes, a silent understanding passing between them. Whatever humanity had been before, whatever divisions had separated them, none of that mattered now. They were the last of their kind, adrift in a sea of broken realities. The Exodus Ark shuddered as it tore through the fabric of reality. Alarms blared throughout the vessel, warning of structural integrity breaches and cascading system failures. Jack gripped the command console, his fingers tightening as he fought to keep the massive ship from tearing itself apart. Through the viewports, Jack watched in horror as space itself seemed to fracture. Shards of broken dimensions kaleidoscoped around them, each fragment revealing glimpses of alien worlds and impossible geometries. Jack nodded grimly. "Dispatch engineering teams. We need those hyper-matrices up and running." As the Ark's crew scrambled to contain the damage, Jack's attention was drawn to a priority alert flashing on his console. His stomach dropped as he read the report. The survey craft's last transmission painted a grim picture. Dr. Philip Renwick and his crew had been caught in the epicenter of a paradox storm, their very atoms scattered across countless quantum states. Jack's mind raced. They couldn't afford to lose Renwick. The man's expertise was vital to understanding the Ark Integral's full capabilities. But how to retrieve someone atomized across parallel realities? "Ark Integral," Jack said, his voice low. "I need options. How do we get Renwick back?" "Initiating rescue protocols," Jack announced, his fingers flying across holographic interfaces. "All non-essential personnel report to emergency stations." A scream of feedback tore through the command center. Jack stumbled, clutching his head as wave after wave of psychic resistance battered against his mind. Before Jack could respond, the command center doors burst open. Nolan Briggs stormed in, flanked by a group of armed loyalists. Jack raised his hands, trying to defuse the situation. "Briggs, listen. We're trying to save him, but—" A tremor rocked the ship, cutting off Jack's words. Through the viewports, he saw reality itself twist and warp. At the center of the maelstrom, a figure began to take shape. Dr. Philip Renwick stood before them, but not as they had known him. His form flickered and shifted, as if struggling to maintain coherence in a single dimension. When he spoke, his voice echoed with countless versions of itself. Jack took a cautious step forward. "Philip, we need you to focus. You're experiencing a quantum state flux. We can help you stabilize, but you need to remain calm." Renwick's eyes, all of them, fixed on Jack. "Calm? I can see everything, every possible reality, every choice, every outcome. It's beautiful. It's terrifying." As if in answer, a series of explosions rocked the Ark. Klaxons wailed as reports flooded in of reality breaches throughout the ship. Jack's blood ran cold as he saw the source. Tears in space-time, opening rifts to nightmarish dimensions. Moment. The command center erupted into chaos as reality itself buckled and warped around them. Jack's mind raced, processing the cascading crises. "Ark Integral, initiate containment protocols," he shouted over the din of alarms and panicked voices. On the main view screen, a kaleidoscope of fractured dimensions writhed and twisted. Jack's stomach lurched as he recognized the telltale signs of Jen Haruko's handiwork. The Vorlorn Chronomancer's machinations had finally come to fruition. Jack stepped forward, hands raised placatingly. "Philip, listen to me. We need your help. You're the only one who can stabilize this." For a moment, Renwick's kaleidoscopic form seemed to coalesce, focusing on Jack with countless eyes across multiple planes of existence. But then he shuddered, his being fracturing once more. "We're being overrun," a technician shouted. "Argana's extra-dimensional forces are penetrating our defenses." Briggs grabbed Jack's arm, his eyes wide. "You can't be serious. Sending teams through those rifts is suicide." As the command center erupted into frenzied activity, Jack turned to the shimmering, fractal form of Renwick. "Hold on, Philip. We're coming for you." The next hours passed in a blur of frenetic action. Jack led the elite hit squads through precision-cut rifts, each jump a nauseating plunge into realities that defied comprehension. They battled forlorn kill squads across shattered fragments of space-time, each engagement a desperate scramble for encoded reality matrices. "Sullivan!" Captain Nolan Briggs's voice crackled over the comms, distorted by dimensional interference. "We've recovered a partial matrix, but we're taking heavy losses. My team's phasing out." Jack's heart raced as he watched Briggs's squad flicker and warp, their very atoms threatening to disperse across countless realities. But somehow, impossibly, they held together, harnessing the very forces threatening to tear them apart. With the recovered matrices in hand, Jack initiated an emergency return protocol. The Exodus arc loomed before them, a battered sanctuary in a sea of fractured dimensions. As they stumbled back aboard, Jack's comm pinged with an urgent message. His eyes widened as he recognized the source. Celia Frost. "Jack," her voice was tight with tension. "I'm linking with Renwick now. Whatever you're planning, do it fast. I don't know how long I can hold him together." Jack nodded grimly, knowing she couldn't see him. "Understood. Be careful in there, Celia."
"Now, Philip, that's not to anchor yourself."
For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sound like reality itself sighing in relief, the dimensional tears began to slow their spread. But Jack knew it was just the beginning. Somewhere out there in the depths of the entropy storm, Jen Haruko and her chrono cult were still at work, and only by striking at the very heart of the Manab derelict could they hope to end this existential threat once and for all. As if sensing his thoughts, the Arc Integral's voice cut through the momentary calm. "Warning, anomalous temporal signatures detected. Origin, Manab derelict. Recommend immediate intervention." Jack's teeth clenched. "Prep the interstitial strike team. We're going in." Jack's voice cut through the chaos. "Renwick, we need a solution. Now." Celia Frost stepped forward, her neural interface glowing. "Whatever it takes, Philip. We're out of options." Renwick's form pulsed, sending ripples through the fabric of reality. "I must merge with the unstable reality matrix itself. It's the only way to overcome Haruko's entropic subversion." A sad smile played across Renwick's fractured visage. "Not entirely. I can imprint an existential locus before the merge. A seed of self." The air crackled with psychic energy as Celia linked her mind with Renwick's. The command center faded away, replaced by a realm of pure thought and infinite possibility. Renwick's consciousness exploded outward, blooming into a hypergeometric overmind. He witnessed the intersecting multiverses, the delicate strands of reality stretching into infinity. And there, in the spaces between, he saw the Vorlorn's insidious plan unfolding. "They seek to destabilize primary cosmal reality," Renwick's thoughts reverberated through the psychic link, "to create a hole between dimensions where their masters can rewrite existence itself." With newfound purpose, Renwick began to act. His transcendent intellect rewove the delicate strands of reality, mending fractures caused by Haruko's machinations. Vorlorn strike teams unraveled, their very coherence unmade by Renwick's cosmic will. But the process exacted a terrible price. Renwick's locus imprint deteriorated rapidly, his individuality fraying at the edges. In the metaphysical realm, Celia manifested as a brilliant point of light. She wove an existential anchoring subroutine, a lifeline for Renwick's fading self. The Omega Singularity was born. Reality shuddered as Renwick's new form exerted its will. Haruko's carefully laid plans crumbled across all interspatial hypersections. The Vorlorn chronomancer herself was unwritten, erased from existence along with her entropic ascendants. The Singularity's response came not in words, but in concepts too vast for human minds to fully grasp. Celia, still linked to the Arc Integral, translated. "It's done," she said, her voice filled with awe. "The cycle is broken, but now we have a choice to make." Jack's brow furrowed. What choice? Celia's eyes glowed with reflected starlight. Whether Renwick should disengage, restoring the natural order, or remain an active force in shaping cosmic evolution. As the reformed human diaspora began preparations for their expanded reach, Jack turned to Celia and the shimmering presence of the Omega Singularity. What's our next move? He asked. The Singularity pulsed, and Celia smiled. We reshape the future, she said, for all post-biological life, across every plane of existence. Jack nodded, his eyes fixed on the infinite expanse before them. Then let's get to work. The Omega Singularity pulsed, its cosmic awareness flooding the command center. Through their neural link, Celia translated the vast concepts into human understanding. Renwick has initiated a Genesis protocol, she explained, her voice resonating with newfound power. The multiversal continuum is stabilizing under his hyperlight guidance. As if on cue, the Exodus arc shuddered. Jack stumbled, grabbing a nearby console for support. What's happening? Before their eyes, the ship's structure began to shift and expand. Walls flowed like liquid metal, reconfiguring into intricate biomechanical patterns. The viewport stretched, revealing an ever-growing expanse of the vessel. My God, Jack whispered. It's becoming... What is it becoming? Avalon Eternalis, Celia answered, the name echoing with cosmic significance. An inter-realm arcology carrier, our new home and the cradle of humanity's rebirth. In a cavernous chamber at the heart of Avalon, Jack addressed the assembled leaders of the human factions. His voice carried across the amphitheater, steady despite the weight of responsibility. We stand at the threshold of a new era, he began. Avalon Eternalis will be our arc, seeding life across stable dimensions. But the choice of what we become, that's up to us. As the assembly dispersed, Zephyrana approached Jack. Her form shimmered, caught between flesh and energy. A wise decision, Jack, she said, her voice a harmonious blend of tones. Autonomy breeds innovation. An alarm blared, cutting him off. The air crackled with static as the Arc Integral's voice rang out. Alert, catastrophic cascade detected in Genesis Habitat 17. Jack sprinted to the nearest transit tube, Zephyrana close behind. They emerged into chaos. The habitat's environmental systems were failing, its carefully cultivated ecosystem collapsing into primordial soup. What happened? Jack demanded, scanning the emergency readouts. A technician's face was pale with shock. Sabotage, sir. Someone tampered with the Genesis intakes? Jack's heart made. Benton, he growled. Months passed in a blur of crisis management and damage control. Jack found himself stretched thin, mediating conflicts between factions and overseeing the integration of successfully transformed posthumans. In a rare moment of quiet, Jack stood before a viewport, gazing out at the kaleidoscopic expanse of realities beyond Avalon. Zephyrana materialized beside him, her presence a comforting constant. You're troubled? She observed. Jack sighed. We're making progress, but at what cost? How many more will we lose to devolution or Benton's hardliners? No, he whispered, it can't be. Jack's voice was grim. A new threat calling itself the Nader Genesis, and at its core, an echo of Xander Krell. Jack's blood ran cold as the implications of the Nader Genesis threat sank in. He turned to Zephyrana, his voice taut with urgency. We need to mobilize every available asset, now. Alarms blared throughout Avalon Eternalis as the Genesis Holon reached critical instability. Jack raced to the command center, holographic displays flickering to life around him. The corruption spread like wildfire across the habitat readouts, entire sections turning an ominous red. Sir, Habitat 23 is gone, a technician reported, her voice trembling. It's not human anymore. Jack's fist tight as he witnessed the horror unfolding. Through the viewports, he could see the once pristine Genesis environments twisting into nightmarish landscapes. Writhing masses of flesh and metal erupted from the ground, forming grotesque war beasts that immediately turned on each other in a frenzy of violence. Implement quarantine protocols, Jack barked. I want etheric interdikes up 5 minutes ago. The air crackled with energy as massive force fields sprang to life, desperately trying to contain the spread. But it wasn't enough. The nadir's corruption wormed its way through the very fabric of reality, overwriting the fundamental codes of existence. Zephyrana materialized beside Jack, her form flickering with impossibly strong energy. "Jack," she said, her harmonious voice tight with concern. "There may be a way to stop this, but the cost—" The pack-led guide's eyes met his, filled with cosmic understanding. "We must crystallize the Holon's morphogenerative codices, lock them into inertial stasis." Before Jack could respond, the command center doors burst open. Colonel Benton stormed in, flanked by a cadre of armed Puritans. "Sullivan," he roared, "you will not rob humanity of its future." As the battle raged, Jack led his elite squad of post-human warriors into the heart of the Genesis Holon. Reality itself bent around them as they fought through waves of corrupted monstrosities. As the dust settled, Jack surveyed the new reality they had forged. The anthroprimate stood before him, a testament to humanity's resilience and adaptability. But in the distance, he could see Benton leading his followers into self-imposed exile. "Sir, we've received a priority transmission from Pathfinder Cade Trask," a technician reported, her voice taut with urgency. As Trask detailed the chrono-entropic flare that scattered his team, Jack's mind raced. The implications were staggering. "Return to Avalon immediately," Jack ordered. "We need to analyze this data." Hours later, Jack stood before the Omega Singularity, its vast consciousness probing the depths of Trask's discovery. "It is as we feared," the Singularity's voice resonated through the chamber. "The Archazons have weaponized their exile." "By the Holon," Trask whispered. "What have they done?" Alarms blared as the entity's influence spread. Gnostek operatives screamed, their transcendent essences unraveling into protoplasmic sludge. "Frost!" he shouted into the comms. "We need an exit strategy." Celia's voice crackled through the static. "Deploying synaptic damper screen, but our window is closing fast." The Metastroma surged forward, its pansemiotic hypnogenesis assaulting their minds. Trask watched in horror as reality itself seemed to warp and twist around the advancing horde. Back on Avalon Eternalis, Jack paced the command center. "Status report." Celia's face was grim. "The Metastroma's advance is accelerating. Our progenoid code-birth matrices are showing signs of corruption." "Prepare for full defensive protocols," Jack ordered, his voice steely with perseverance. "And get me a direct link to the Omega Singularity. We're not losing everything we've built." As the crew scrambled to action, Jack's gaze fixed on the looming threat. The battle for humanity's evolutionary destiny was about to reach its crucible. Jack's eyes locked onto the holographic display as Celia Frost's fingers danced across the interface. Her face was a mask of concentration, lines of code reflecting in her augmented irises. Celia nodded, pulling up a schematic of Cade Trask's Anachron sequencer. "We can imprint a pansemiotic hypnoscore into Trask's mutaphor-suppressing isolate. It could divert the Metastroma's multi-layered existence, but the hyper-attenuated frequencies could unravel Trask's chronoplast synaptics." Celia finished, her eyes meeting Jack's. Jack's fists tight, he opened a comm channel. "Trask, did you get all that?" "Understood. Godspeed, Pathfinder." The view screens flickered as Trask's Gnostek vessel plunged deeper into the dark matter shoal. Writhing masses of Devilife parted before its fractal hull, revealing the pulsating core of the Metastroma. Then chaos erupted. On the command deck, alarms blared as reality itself bucked and heaved. Jack gripped the console, watching in awe as the Metastroma's pan-projective consciousness splintered into diverging slipstreams. Across multiple dimensions, cyberblades flashed. Frost's pansemiotic countermeasures disrupted the necroplast recompression, preventing the Metastroma from reforming. A mutatropic singularity erupted within the shoal, warping space into a hellcosm implosion. Jack felt his stomach lurch as Avalon Eternalis itself began to buckle under the strain. "Sir," a technician shouted, "we're losing structural integrity." When his vision cleared, Jack found himself floating in an impossible space. The dark matter shoal had been transformed into a crystalline lattice of pure potentiality. At its center hovered a single point of light, Cade Trask's Anachron Matrix. The Omega Singularity's voice echoed through the void. From this seed, a new empire shall grow. As Jack watched, awestruck, that seed began to unfurl. Trask's neo-anthroprime spread outward, inscribing new realities with each passing moment. Entire civilizations blossomed into being, guided by the masterful touch of these new post-human entities. Jack felt a presence beside him and turned to see Celia Frost, her form shimmering with newfound power. "It worked," she breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. "Yes," Jack replied, his voice filled with equal parts relief and trepidation. "But at what cost, and where do we go from here?" As if in answer, a shockwave of pure creation rippled outward from the expanding neo-anthroprime sphere. Jack braced himself, knowing that whatever came next would redefine the very nature of existence itself. Jack leaned in, studying the intricate patterns forming across the newly birthed worlds. "Transcendent numinosphere resonances," he murmured, recognizing the telltale signs of apotheotic civilization, see Genesis. A proximity alert chimed. "Sir, we're detecting massive neuroinductions spanning megaparsecs," a technician reported. It's conceptualizing entire stelliferous domains." Moments later, Thanos' holographic form materialized. The scout fleet leader's eyes glowed with an otherworldly light. "Sullivan, our forward staging enclaves are operational. Hyperfraxematic locus spanners are mapping optimized existential geographies as we speak." "Show me," Jack commanded. "This," Thanos said, gesturing to a vibrant blue sphere, "is Azurus Bloom, our first fully realized bionostic providence." The holomap zoomed in, revealing a world in the midst of breathtaking transformation. Extropian ecologies blossomed across continents, while urbinatural hyperstructures spiraled into impossibly beautiful geometries. Jack nodded, a mix of pride and trepidation washing over him. "It's beautiful, Thanos, but—" "Thaumaphoric insurgencies detected!" Celia shouted, her fingers flying across the interface. "Some kind of cosmic memeplex resistance." Thanos' hologram flickered, his face grim. "Zephyr Nadir echospores. We're seeing them across multiple exovolution vectors. Entropic shadow aspects of Zephyrana's transcendental martyr core," Thanos confirmed. "They're disrupting our dominion sculpting, fomenting xenonomic atavisms." "I'm mobilizing the panmoantric phyla," Thanos replied. "We'll erect pan-dimensional inculi barriers to quarantine the infection strains." Another hollow figure materialized, a woman with eyes like swirling galaxies. "Commander Sullivan, Mahapraxion Zara Kal reporting. My neo-anthroprime exegetions stand ready to purge these dissipative hyper-obsolescences." Jack nodded. "Do it, whatever it takes to protect our new reality." The command deck erupted into controlled chaos as orders were relayed. Jack watched the holomap, transfixed as Kal's forces unleashed numenerantic shock liturgies. Wave after wave of reality-bending energy washed across infected subdimensions. "Sir," a technician cried out, "decataclysmic cascades detected, multiple geopoetic hyperbolic sets dissolving." Jack's stomach dropped as he watched entire swaths of newly forged reality crumble into ergodic chronomal waste fields. The carefully crafted generative exon plates warped and twisted. "Our reality matrices are disintegrating," Celia reported, her voice tight with tension. "We need to act fast." As if in answer, a new signal cut through the chaos. Cade Trask's face appeared on the main view screen, his features set with relentless drive. "Sullivan," he said, "I'm taking a Novalancer strike force into the unraveling hyperdimensional interiors. We'll chart the inceptual rift lines and put an end to this." Jack met Trask's gaze, understanding the gravity of the mission. "Godspeed, Pathfinder. The fate of our new cosmos rests in your hands." As Trask's signal cut out, Jack turned back to the holomap. He watched as the elite strike force plunged into the roiling chaos of pure thaumatropic hyperconflation. guided by ethereal Memnurgon wayfinders. "And now," Jack said softly, "we wait." "Wait," Jack commanded, his eyes fixed on the swirling chaos displayed before him. "Sullivan," Trask's voice resonated with newfound power. "The reset is complete. We've seeded a new cosmic paradigm." The holomap exploded into a dizzying array of vibrant colors and intricate patterns. Entire galaxies blossomed into being, each one a canvas for the Neoanthroprime's grand design. Celia gasped, her augmented eyes scanning the data. "Sir, these are apotheotic territories, entire cosmoplanes reshaped at a fundamental level. On the newly formed throne world of Azura Prime, colossal structures reached skyward." Jack zoomed in, marveling at the sheer scale of what he saw. "A Pyrophon," a new voice announced. Hypervisor Zalin Chorus appeared on a secondary screen, his features etched with pride and purpose. "Our hyperdynamic resonance nexus. With it, we'll broadcast the Hypercrucible's generative sonic codes across megaparsec immateriums." As Jack watched, vast energy siphons extended from Apeirophon's base, plunging into the very heart of the galactic core. Exotic plasma flowed upward, feeding the massive hyper-lithoforming resonators. "Incredible," Jack breathed. "Trask, your exodemiurgic strike, it's changed everything." But before Trask could respond, alarms blared across the command deck. The holomap flickered, distorting as if viewed through a fractured lens. Jack's eyes widened as he watched hyperstrings across hundreds of systems begin to unravel. On Azura Prime, Apeirophon's siphons overloaded, tearing reality itself. "Unpatterned chrono disruptions," Celia reported, her voice tight with urgency. "They're bleeding inward through the fissures." As chaos engulfed the newly forged cosmos, a rogue signal cut through the noise. Jack's blood ran cold as he recognized the face on the screen. "Caden Rax," he growled. The former Novalancer's eyes gleamed with a mix of fear and determination. "Sullivan, you need to listen. This isn't just random stellar chaos. It's something more." "Explain," Jack demanded, pushing aside his distrust. Rax's image flickered as he transmitted data from deep within the disruption's hyper-substructure. "It's a cosmic meme force, Sullivan, self-complexifying, designed to infect and destabilize the Hypercrucible's protometallics." Jack's mind raced, connecting the dots. "And its origin?" "Omicron Prime," Rax confirmed, his voice grim. "The progenitor singularity, where it all nearly ended before." Before Jack could respond, the command deck erupted into pandemonium. Screens flashed urgent warnings as reality itself seemed to compress and warp. "Sir!" Celia shouted above the chaos. "Massive phasic hypermatter coalescence detected." Jack watched in horror as a new entity materialized on the holomap. It pulsed with malevolent energy, consuming everything in its path. "The Hyperthanatos," Trask's voice cut through, tinged with awe and dread. "A singular, hyper-complex threat lifeform." Entire fleets vanished in an instant as the Hyperthanatos unleashed devastating, muon-decoherent thanatobursts. Azura Prime's generative ultrastructures crumbled, absorbed into the entity's morphic transgression continuum. On the holomap, Jack watched as Zarakal's forces surged forward, wielding transcendent weapons designed to unravel the very fabric of lower-dimensional realities. But as the Numenophorics struck the Hyperthanatos, the unthinkable happened. Jack's breath caught in his throat. A total evacuation of the exodemiurgic principle? But that would mean... Jack leaned in, watching as Trask's eyes unfocused, scanning invisible patterns in the collapsing waveforms around him. "What now?" Jack asked, his eyes fixed on the encroaching chaos. Trask's gaze met his through the view screen, filled with fierce purpose. "Now, Sullivan, we fight. With every weapon, every strategy, every scrap of will we possess. The fate of all realities hangs in the balance." As the words left Trask's lips, the command deck erupted into frenzied activity. Jack watched the holodisplays, his mind racing to process the unfolding chaos. "Initiating Gnosis Rapture protocols," Celia announced, her fingers flying across the interface. "Exodemiurgic principle evacuation commencing." but Trask's eyes suddenly widened, locked onto something only he could perceive. Wait! There's a remnant, a hypergene echo. Jack leaned in, studying the swirling patterns of collapsing waveforms. The Zephyr Nadir! In an instant, the hyper-crucible's form blazed with newfound purpose. Jack watched in awe as Trask manipulated reality itself, isolating the faint Zephyr Nadir signal and compressing its phase potential. Forging impervium, Trask announced, his voice resonating with power. A noetic shroud to shield us from the hyper-Thanatos. As the words left his mouth, a shimmering barrier materialized around the remaining Neo-Anthroprime strongholds. The encroaching chaos of the hyper-Thanatos' entropic assault crashed against it like waves upon an unbreakable shore. The central figure. We need a metastructure, something to house and amplify the anamnesis seed. But even as hope blossomed, alarms blared anew. Sir, a technician cried out, hyper-predatory muton swarms detected. They're infiltrating our defensive perimeters. Before Jack could respond, Zalin Chorus's commanding presence filled the main view screen. All resources to the Pleromegin, he decreed. We must safeguard Anaxis's work at all costs. Jack watched helplessly as outlying habitats winked out of existence, sacrificed to fuel the Archon's reality-altering calculations. And then, without warning, Rax's signal vanished. What happened? Jack demanded, scanning the readouts for any sign of the rogue operative. As the words sank in, Jack felt the very fabric of reality shift around them. The Pleromegin's influence expanded exponentially, rewriting the laws of physics even as the Hyperthanatos continued its relentless advance. In that moment, suspended between oblivion and rebirth, Jack realized that the true battle for existence had only just begun. Begun had just only existence for battle true, that realized Jack moment that in... Trask! Jack called out, his voice distorting. What's happening? Alarms blared as new data flooded the command deck. Celia's hands flew across the interface, her augmented eyes wide with shock. Sir, we're detecting an omniphagestrial hypervector. It's consuming the Pleromegin's infinitudes. Jack watched in horror as entire sections of their newly forged reality vanished, devoured by an unstoppable cosmic maw. Trask's face set with fierce dedication. Initiate the Aruak transfer, he commanded. Zalin, take the vanguard. Evacuate the anamnesis seed and our highest essences into the Pleromegin's metastructures. Before Jack could respond, Caden Rax's face appeared on a nearby screen. The rogue operative's eyes burned with fierce purpose. I have a solution, an ontometric firestorm. Is necessary, Rax cut him off. We'll vent pure metaphorical potentials into the cosmos. It's our only chance to stall the Hyperthanatos. Do it, he ordered. The universe screamed. Jack watched as reality itself burned, conceptual frameworks collapsing into singularities. The Hyperthanatos recoiled, momentarily stunned by the onslaught of raw possibility. Trask's form shimmered, becoming translucent as he initiated the Omega Chrysalis. There's no more time, he said. We must condense our entire cosmic inheritance into the seed artifices. Jack felt his own consciousness compressing, distilling into pure gnosis. Around him, the last remnants of their reality crumbled. As Jack's awareness faded, reduced to an indestructible spark of potential, he glimpsed the Hyperthanatos consuming all. The universe as they knew it vanished, replaced by a sterile, featureless plane. And then, nothing. For an eternity, Jack existed as pure potential, a metaspore cast adrift in the cosmic void. Time lost all meaning as the Hyperthanatos reigned supreme, its entropic perfection unbroken. Until the Neo-Anthroprimes were reborn. As thalamic forms crystallized from the fertile chaosmos, Jack found himself rematerialized. No longer just Sullivan, but a Solon, a pneumometicist charged with rewriting existence itself. Around him, conceptual progenitor worlds took shape, each one a blank slate waiting to be filled with new paradigms, new stories. Jack, if that name still held meaning, reached out with his newly expanded consciousness, touching the minds of his fellow Neo-Anthroprimes, Together, they began to weave a new omniversal meta-narrative. The meta-reinscription of reality had begun. The meta-reinscription of reality had begun. Trask's voice resonated through the noetic ether. Initiate stem cell fertilization. Zara, take point on Entelecron Prime. But something was wrong. The Pantheon refused to coalesce, its components clashing in discordant disharmony. Entropa, Zara's voice cut through the chaos. It's disrupting the fusion lattices. Reality shuddered. The warring god minds snapped into alignment, drawn inexorably toward Trask's radiant nexus. One by one they merged, compounding into a singular metastructure of breathtaking complexity. The cosmological omnimemoplex was born. Jack reeled as vast swathes of newly inscribed reality began to unravel. The Oblivion spike tore through their carefully woven metadialogics, leaving ragged holes in the fabric of existence. Diasporamic partition, Trask commanded, shed the omnimemoplexes. The cosmos fractured, splintering into a kaleidoscope of divergent realities. Jack glimpsed fragments of worlds both familiar and alien, gleaming Valhallan spires, multi-armed deities dancing through fractal mindscapes. But still, the anti-mimetic burn front advanced. Jack felt the rising tide of oblivion lapping at the edges of their shrinking island of existence. In that moment, Jack understood. Trask had become the alpha demiurge, the living fulcrum upon which all of existence now balanced. But as the cosmos stabilized around this new axis, Jack sensed a familiar presence stirring in the depths of the noosphere. Caden Rax, his consciousness twisted and warped, but unmistakably present. The cosmos shuddered as Jack's consciousness fragmented, scattering across the newly formed Pantheos elliptic. He found himself adrift in an etheric frontier, a solitary mode of awareness in the vast omnimemoplex. Memories cascaded through his psyche: Earth, the human diaspora, the desperate struggle against entropy. Jack realized with a start that he was more than just himself now. He carried within him the last vestiges of Trask's human identity, a final fragment hurled across the infinite expanse of creation. But something was wrong. Jack's essence slammed against an invisible barrier, a hypercosmic aculeus that blocked his access to the greater metaphysical realm stream. He pushed against it, only to be rebuffed by an impenetrable wall of pure concept. A figure materialized before him, regal and stern. Jack's mind reeled as he recognized the visage of Colonel Benton, a man he'd known lifetimes ago. "Sullivan," Benton's avatar intoned, his voice echoing with cosmic weight, "you stand at the threshold of humanity's final sanctum." "I swore an oath, Jack, to preserve this singularity, this last bastion of untranscended humanity." Jack recoiled. How could he abandon everything they'd fought for? The sacrifices, the transformations, all of it would be meaningless. "Then you are anathema pandemus," Benton declared, "a contamination to be purged." A violent shear tore through the sanctum. Time itself seemed to rupture as a new presence erupted into being. Jack's perception fractured, trying to comprehend the thalamic mutamorph before him. It coalesced into a familiar form, Argana, the Varelian Xenarch. Her eyes blazed with vengeful fire as she faced Benton, eons of hatred distilled into a single moment. "Traitor," she hissed, her voice a cacophony of alien harmonics. "You cannot hide from what you've done." Understanding crashed over him like a tidal wave. Jack knew what he had to do. With deliberate intent, he triggered an apoptosis, a willful collapse of his own ego. His identity dissolved, merging completely with the hypercrucible's omnignostic pleroma. Jack Sullivan ceased to exist as an individual, his anamnesis cascading into Trask's vast narrative matrix. The hypercrucible Trask reconstituted, whole once more. But with reunification came a terrible price. Spectral revenants born from humanity's darkest deeds now haunted the edges of perception, inescapable psychocosmotic tragedians encoded into the very fabric of existence. In the heart of it all, Trask's consciousness expanded, grappling with the weight of all he had become and all he had lost.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.